So what we're going to go over today is the target audience. So what is a target audience, right? Well, it's the audience that you target. If you try to target everybody, that equals nobody, right? That's the first thing to know when you're saying your target audience. Yes, it's great to get all customers, but the target are the ones that either are your customers more or go to your website more. It's just your demographics. So a target audience is more like demographics, how old they are, educational level, stuff like that, that for some reason Google has access to if they do. And then not only are your demographics important, but the the fact that everybody saying that equals no one because you don't have a target audience. That means everyone's your target audience, so there's no like it doesn't mean anything. Slash nonsensical. All right. So that's what you first want to realize is first the definition of the target audience, and then second, you want to see that everyone equals no one. So get that misconception out of the way. Now, let's say that you don't have a profile built right now, right? What do you do? How to build the profile? All right. And the best scenario for figuring out a profile is information you already have. So have you had this business for a while? Look at your customers, tally them, see or just get a feel for who really goes to your place the most just off of memory. If you haven't started yet, I would brainstorm with either an AI agent or just the internet about what the situation would be because someone else could have went through that situation as well, right? So your demographics are really dependent on your area, of course. So the first thing to see is do you have data? Can you decode it or use it? Is analyze the data, of course. Now, if you can't do any one of these three steps, right, you have to go down here and consult or brainstorm would be another good one. So after you've consulted or brainstormed with somebody, right, you create a profile and then, the third one leads to it and then this one leads to it after you brainstorm is target audience ID. That's what you have now. You have the ID of the target audience. So after we've found the target audience, right, after we've profiled somebody to see what we should prioritize in either our product or our service or our website in general, it can be really, really, really useful in the case of building a website because, different cohorts like different things. Like the older people like simpler and bigger text, of course. The younger like more artsy sometimes, more creative, but more creative can also get more confusing because art can kind of hide some of the UI and make it worse. Anyways, I'm not going to get too much into that. Look at your audience, see it, right? And then if you can interview any of them, do you know any of them or you've established relationships with them? So that's a different way to profile. The second way would be to interview customers about changes, quality, etc. Stuff you want to know to build a profile. That's another way to do it. And then after you've asked these people, you for behavior matching, meaning does the behavior equal the affect or the feeling? If it doesn't, then what's the point of doing number one, right? They lied to you inadvertently, probably. Sometimes people just don't know what they want. We're pretty bad at that. At least I am. Sometimes I'm not gonna lie to you. And then you want to also ask open questions. So part A would be open questions because you don't want. So you don't want these two to not be aligned. It's either this one or this one or two method to get that target audience. Now, once you have this target audience, which is really the difficult part, right? You have to keep in the context of the problem, right? So normally when you do this, you're targeting somebody because you're not getting enough customers, you're not having this, you're not having that. I mean, there's a lot that can go wrong. It's a really stressful thing to open a small business or anything like that, but you have to profile the problem as well. So after, we'll say step three, I guess, but step one and two are basically the same thing. Anyways, step three is figure out why you're doing it. So you have to figure out so after you got this, you got problem. So you have to profile the motive slash why need it. Why do we need this analysis? Are we just doing it to do it? I mean, that can skew things a little bit, make it more academic than useful, more generalized. Um, Next, you want to look at the biggest thing with demographics and only having demographics is that you can see who they are, but you don't know, right? You don't know who they actually look like, right? I mean, you can see their like general picture, but you can't like identify somebody. You're like, for sure it's that person, right? It becomes more and more generalized and less useful to target. And target sounds wrong because it sounds almost like you're targeting. You know what I mean? But it's more of just focusing. I'm just gonna use focusing from now because I hate saying that. And then also the time, right? So if someone goes on the site, leaves right away, that's a um, less optimal. Normally, you can see the countries, right? And then you can look at the countries, and then you can say, okay, this is like the average demographic for them, or whatever Google has, or whatever you have demographic wise. If you have a different provider, some sort, uh, that could work as well. So after you include the problem with all of these in mind, so the timing as well, and generalized. Is it generalized? Is it too demographic-y? So demograph. So what you can do now, right, is you've really identified basically everything, right, about the person that you possibly can. Or you can go more in depth with hiring somebody to profile them as well. Like there's actually consultants out there that will do that for you. Like I don't know, someone's whole job. That's kind of crazy to me. But anyways, it's none of my business, right? So what you can do now is sketch it out. And you ask why, why do I have to waste paper, right? Why do I have to waste paper on sketching something out? Well, sketching it out and writing things causes you two times analyzing events. So when you just think about something, right, you analyze it once unless you dwell on it, right? That's a rare thing that you don't dwell on everything. And once you write it, you really have to work with it and play with it and put it in language terms. If that makes any sense. I mean, that kind of limits you to language, but even with its limitations, it's got that funnel structure, right, of specificity where there's like some words that are all the way down here, some words all the way up here. I might put a graphic here. I'll um, like I'm talking about right now, right? About it committing to memory. This is like more general, like Amazon. And then down here, it goes further and further down to more specific. And then in the specific is like Toys R Us because they sell us stuff. It's still general, right? But I'm getting on a tangent about language. Sketch it out with language. Language helps you remember. If you think about any of your memories, I normally just think of words because that's just what the easiest thing to do is. That's just what my brain does. So it's really important to focus on those. Also, some myths, or I'm gonna bust real quick. That sounds bad. I actually don't like saying that, and I don't want to ever do it again. So this is the fifth section of myths. From now on, I will never say that again. So the bigger the audience means more sales. So audience does not equal audience size, actually. Audience size does not equal the sales. So what it really means is heightened competition because there's more people going out there, and that means there's a higher ceiling or higher entry So you need more money to start. You know, it's not just you can just go in that instantly. Um, and the bigger the audience, the more ads you need to reach them or posts, right? Because you have to compete with the big guys who have all the views, and Google just wants to push and push to them. All right, next, the audience is demographic, age, or age, gender, income. Well, yeah, demographics are a part of it. There are also the problem. Why is the problem that even there? So another big part of it is audience does not equal demographics alone. And, why is that, right? Well, they don't target demographics alone, or they're not just demographics alone, because they're also more or less a person with people tendencies, right? So, yes, it's that's even generalizing it even more. But if there's like a really common human tendency that like 80% of us fall for, that means it depends on how it depends on a lot of stuff. All I'm saying. But if you have it analyzed and look at it, it can really mean a lot to have all of this other. It's an actual human being, right? I'm not a blob of somebody else. I'm like them. I have all my unique characteristics and they all intermingle. So there's just a lot to it. And you can't just ask people what they want. So, um, asking directly causes this thing to occur where the voice you hear in your head when you're speaking or when you're thinking about speaking. You have that system two. I think it's system two. If it's system one, I'll replace that with system one. Maybe. So system two, I can never remember. I'll put it right here though. Um, so system two does this thing where we like think, right? Like language and stuff. Prefrontal, so the newer, and then that newer system is actually way, way, way slower. And then actually the automatic in time, the automatic, yeah, the automatic mode or sys one, right? System one is way faster. Using this system one memory, them not being conscious of it, not thinking about it, and it's just like they're unconscious. People like to say, you know what I mean? They're not thinking about it. Um, there's a lot of ways to do this, and it's research, right? So you have to. Every research has a flaw in it. There's no perfect research, so you have to look at the data and understand it. Um, so if you think you already know your customer, you might not know your online customer. That's the thing. So in person does not equal online audience. And why is that, right? Because you think, well, the people who are going in here probably no. The people who are going online and ordering are people like from DoorDash who don't want to go out, right? So of course they're not going to be out if they don't want to go out, right? That makes a lot of sense. So they're just not the same, right? They could be completely different people, and you could be surprised with how different it is. Of course, if you don't think you need to check, don't check, right? Um, so your audience is ever evolving. That's another big thing. Another sort of misconception, right? Some people think about it, some people don't. But it changes. It does change with age. So audience. All right. So last but not least, right? Last but not least. Um, so narrow. So first thing you want to do is narrow it. Narrow the scope / funnel. Bottom of the funnel, right? I can't draw a funnel, but that's like a funnel. We'll say that. And yeah, so you want to get to the bottom of the funnel, and then after you do that, check for accuracy, right? So ask it. It's difficult to do. So that's the last is just, and then just iterate on this, and then the third one would be, you didn't see that. The third one would be, implement it. I mean, that's the reason you're doing all these other steps, of course. I mean, it's pretty much, it's pretty obvious, right? But Um, yeah, so I'll go over it quickly right now. It's on the other side of this. Yeah. Okay. So the first thing to do is don't listen to everyone. You know, saying everybody's your audience equals no one's your audience, right? So after you do that, you got to work the evidence. So you got to find the target audience ID. You can do that through the third method or the second method in the first method of do you have the data? Can you decode it and analyze it? Can see if you can't use it, then you consult and brainstorm, and you can get your target ID. Or you can interview the customer, but don't interview it about things you actually have to like think for. Like interview them and then see their reaction to something. Their heart rate changes. They can create anxiety. There's different things. Heart rate variability is really interesting too if you ever look into that stuff. Interview the witnesses. Like I said before, that's the other method to ID them. Then you want to profile the problem. So work the problem into it, right? You don't have to like just focus on the problem, but the problem here is the context, right? That's what the problem is. So you don't have to like fully know you don't have to know how a tennis ball's made to play tennis, right? There's a lot of things like that where you can just use them without knowing every little thing about them. The first thing to do is sketch it out, right? Drawing it, you analyze it twice. You know, you got that system to memory going, right? You're thinking, you're being a little analytical, and then your brain's like, oh, I'm using all this effort. At least that's the leading theory that I've seen. Effort, and that causes memory. So if your brain commits memory in sleep, so the effort gets translated with sleep to memory as well. People without sleep most of the time can't really think about things because their brain has so many like just like junk memories, right? That are just short term. It's really interesting stuff. There's like a whole protein that breaks down, like connections. All right. After you do that, you want to not focus on demographics alone, but also look at that person. You know, see people's actual reactions down the scope and up the scope as well. So that's what we talk about later here with narrowing the scope. So the lower you go, the more accurate, the more likely the person probably is to go to your site, right? If they're narrow and narrow and narrow, and then you can actually save a lot of money that way. And then once you need more and more audience, you just funnel up, right? So it's like auto sorting for you as well as who is the best and can you capitalize on your knowledge. That's what I'm talking about with the funnel and looking at advertisements and other stuff like that. All right, I'm gonna try this new format. We'll see what it looks like. I feel like you're too close to me. I hope not. It doesn't really matter that much as long as you can see this text, which I hope you can. Sometimes it's been moving, which sucks, and I'm gonna have to edit that, and I'm gonna hate that. But yeah, so if any questions, email me, call me. My number's on my website, and yeah, thank you so much. That's my outro music.